Hey everyone, I'm Alex and I'll be the moderator of our discussion today. So, very quick background to me. Until recently, I was heading up international expansion at Lego, but left relatively recently to launch my own D2C venture in the men's health and wellness space called ADA, and that will be launching soon. Now, before I introduce the rest of our great panel, I wanted to introduce the actual topic that we'll be discussing, which is performance marketing within the context of D2C. Now, of course, D2C as a concept has been around for a long time, but I think we've seen a huge acceleration of the trend all over the world over the past few years, and especially over the past 18 months. And it's a concept that's not just being embraced by startups, but is becoming increasingly critical as a channel for established brands as well, as I experienced during my time at Lego. And then, of course, performance marketing is another concept and trend that's been relevant for a while now, but really continues to grow in importance, and I think has proved to be a very powerful tool, especially for those in the D2C space. So hopefully this is an interesting and highly relevant topic for those listening in, and we have a great panel to learn from. So without further ado, let's meet that panel, and I'll leave it to you guys to give a quick intro into who each of you are, as well as the businesses that you're here representing. So maybe we can start with George.
Hello, everyone. My name is Giorgiona Dunfeld. I'm the CMO of Trapo Asia. We are the fastest growing car accessories company in Southeast Asia with a presence in countries like Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and so on. We've seen a growth of 5x in the last 2 years since joined Trapo. I have a professional experience of more than 2 years in digital marketing. I've been working in international level for, I would say, most of my career. I'm originally from Romania. A fun fact about me, been living in 5 countries the last 4 years. Been living in Bali at the moment in Malaysia.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So maybe we move on to Siddharth.
Hi, everybody. My name is Siddharth Nandakumar. I handle performance marketing for hyperlocal and D2C initiatives for Hindustan Unilever. The hyperlocal initiative is called My Kirana, which is an online grocery shopping app. And the D2C initiative is called the U Shop, which just launched in March 2021. So, yeah, I'd like to take you through some of the learnings that we have seen, and hopefully we can share and learn from each other. Yeah, it's been I've been into the digital marketing field for around 6 years now. A major part of it was through the digital agency side, but it's just recently that I've moved to the brand side for Unilever. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. And then finally, Kaushik.
Thanks, Alex. Hi, everyone. My name is Kaushik. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Sugar Cosmetics. We're based out of India. It's one of India's largest and fastest growing cosmetics brands. Digitally native, a large part of our journey over the last couple of years has been through a mix of performance marketing and content marketing, brand marketing, of course. So happy to share learnings and learn more from the other panelists here.
Great. So then in terms of jumping into some of the questions that I have for you guys, I think the first one's pretty broad. It's really around what role does performance marketing play within your organization and within your marketing mix? And I guess also what role has performance marketing played in the success of your business today? So maybe actually, Kaushik, we can stick with you and start with you.
Sure. Thanks, Alex. I think the role of and our understanding of performance marketing has changed as the company and we ourselves have evolved. Because if you look at it, the channels haven't really exploded or expanded much beyond what they were 4 years or 5 years back. So when you start a new company or a D2C company, somebody tells you that performance marketing is the way to get sales. We can drink that Kool-Aid for a bit, but the fact is, performance marketing is a way to shine the spotlight on you, whatever you are, whether you're standing there an unknown guy in a brand with an offer or with a great product. Or so performance marketing is great to get attention to you, but I think there's a lot to do before you actually get to the sale, which is what our the evolution of our learning of performance marketing has been. That it's great to get eyeballs to your campaigns, to your product page, landing page, but there's a narrative around how performance marketing automatically is expected to drive sales from day one, which I think there's a lot more in the recipe that goes in before you make that magic dish.
It's interesting. And maybe actually just sticking with that for a second, it would be interesting to understand like how you see then that evolution over time, what you've seen with Sugar Cosmetics, and maybe also just some advice around setting those expectations around performance marketing, what you can expect in those early days, or what you should expect.
Sure. So, from our journey, we've seen that different categories play differently across the platforms we have. In fact, the tools and the categories, by and large, whether it is display, search, they've not changed much, or affiliate marketing, they've not changed much over the years. But if it's a category that's very need based, or there is very high search volume for that category, or specific subcategories within beauty, for example, we've seen search or say Google play very well to that. But if you're a new brand trying to build a narrative around it, visual storytelling sometimes becomes more important than than a search ad campaign. And which is why for us, platforms like Instagram, earlier Facebook, have far outperformed. If you ask me how we split our budgets, I mean, this is available public. I can share. It's almost a 4:1 ratio where the dollars get spent on Instagram and Facebook as opposed to Google. So it's not that we've not experimented with many formats, but as a differentiated and especially D2C brand, you have a different product market fit from the behemoths, from the very large brands. So what is a different product market fit? It's ultimately a story that, okay, this product is different, caters to a different audience. So when you compete with the other existing brands, it is tough to hold the same copy and the placard as everybody else and say, hey, we are X% off Black Friday sale, and it doesn't matter. And ultimately, there has to be some investment done in building a consistent story across the ad to the landing page to the checkout page, so that people believe that yes, this is a new entity and an expert and an authority in the field, who I can trust, and then they are going to send me great products. And if I'm one of the early adopters, I am going to experiment with it. I think that is a very different strategy from the large brands that have scaled, because there the brand commands so much trust that you can straight away, again, Siddharth, you'll be able to lay in on this better.
Yeah.
But you can skip a lot of the processes because the brand name is already established. Otherwise, if somebody, as a new brand, if you barge in even with a lot of marketing dollars, you may get the deal hunters, but that's short term. Eventually, you will have people asking you, by the way, wait a minute, who are you? It's fine that you're 30% off, but who are you, and what do I get when I pay the money? So that's what our journey, of course, a very 30,000 feet has also been as we've evolved.
Yeah, super interesting, and maybe then a natural segue to jump to Siddharth. Same broad question around the how you think about performance marketing, the role it plays in your organization. But I think maybe you'd be great if you could also share some of your thoughts around any differences within a more established CPG like Unilever.
Sure. So I agree to most of the points that Kaushik had mentioned. It's very different when a Unilever ventures into performance marketing versus a Sugar Cosmetics, because the whole trust bit is already established. It's a legacy brand. We have our own 30-40 brands that are already doing branding campaigns, that are already building trust as we speak, right? So when it comes to in a D2C environment, it is easier for us to go in with a performance marketing first approach, where we are one of the biggest ad spenders in the country. So we have that kind of an ammunition to go in and check for performance when it comes to the D2C bit. Also, something that I wanted to touch upon was the visibility into the data aspect that comes in with D2C. That's huge. So most of the part, like especially for Unilever, it's D2C may not be a very high revenue generating option compared to a lot of startups, because we have other avenues to support our turnover and everything. But this is a pure data journey. The amount of data that we get, first party data that we get, and what we can share with the brands for their remarketing campaigns, for their first party data, and that makes the whole operation very efficient. And so that's majorly what I had to that I wanted to talk about in terms of performance. And also, what performance marketing has done to us was it gave us an understanding of what the actual digital CAC is compared to a branding campaign, right? So a branding campaign touches top of the funnel, And performance campaigns mainly focused on the bottom of the funnel. The whole campaign setup and the campaign type is different. So what is that actual CAC that you will get when you run an efficient campaign? And how does it stand between categories? So for us, we know if there is a category, say hair care, we know how individual brands do. Even though the brands have very similar personalities, we know why a brand is doing a better acquisition than another brand. So all those kind of data is what drives the company in this journey in D2C. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for that. That perspective is super, super interesting. And I think for me, a lot of that resonated, also having come from a bigger, more established brand like Lego as well. Cool. And then similar question to George.
I'm probably, since I'm coming from the e-commerce background, I'm probably going to do a mix of both of the panel discussion, because I think that both of my co-panelists, they did amazing points. For us coming from e-commerce, I think that is really important. And coming from a business that is growing, but in the same time, it doesn't have a budget that, everyone is coming to me and saying, okay, it costs 30,000, 100,000, and so on. It's really important to optimize the budget and find the right channel and find the right message for the right audience. And for us, every time that we are talking about performance marketing, we are thinking about the funnel. How can we optimize that funnel, and how we can actually understand where to put the budget in good use. And I think that when we are talking about the funnel, we can talk about the KPIs that are really important. Being an e-commerce business, we are all the time looking at the return of investment. We are looking on the return of ad spend. What is the cost per click? What is the cost per purchase? And something that it was a key of our success is finding leverage and understanding the channel. So what I mean by that is, for example, Google is a search intent network. Facebook is an interest-based network. And we actually realize that the content that is going on each channel needs to resonate with the sorry, you were on mute. Needs to resonate with the audience, right? And the idea behind is that all the time that when we are doing something in marketing, we are basically in the end of the month, we are analyzing the results. How many sales did it generated? What's the cost per click? How many leads it generated? How many impressions did it generated? What's the frequency? And after this, we are constantly adapting to the market. We've been failing, for example, on other networks because we didn't understand the right message and we didn't see sales. For example, TikTok, we kind of like, in a way, were thinking that, hey, let's move one content that is coming from Instagram or from Facebook, let's move it to TikTok, and it didn't work. And we understand that we need to feed the customer what they need according to the channel. So that's one. And the second one, I think that's something that was the key to success for us, was all the time finding key partnerships with other businesses that can create some sort of synergy. That is why we started to work with AirAsia, we started to work with Grab, we started to work with banks, we started to work with insurance companies that are basically creating some sort of leverage where are actually the customers. And yeah, I think that was kind of like important.
Got it. Makes sense. And maybe just because I think you spoke on some interesting things around, optimizing your budget, finding the right platform, right message, right audience, right cost, etc. Maybe Kaushik, I don't know if you're able to expand a little bit on that, or maybe I should just describe how you guys think about that at Sugar, because you must have had the same sort of challenges and questions, especially in early days, but I guess even now as well.
Sorry, Alex, your voice broke up a little bit in the middle. If you could just repeat that last bit.
So it was just it would just be interesting to hear. I think George just spoke about how they think about finding the right channel, optimizing their budget, etc., and how you guys have thought about that at Sugar.
Perfect. So I'll carry on from what I was mentioning earlier. For channel, we ran many experiments. The biggest difference, it's almost like a weapon this category has for Facebook and Instagram, is that you can actually show your products. Of course, Facebook has carousel ads and other inventory, but it just worked better. Now, one of the reasons is that our target audiences takes to a platform like Instagram and YouTube far more natively to learn about our category than search intent-based platforms like Google. And because as a D2C player in a space which is seeing a lot of interest about, okay, how do everybody knows that the beauty and personal care market is growing really fast in India. Now, what does that mean? That means there's a huge funnel of uh, new customers, first-time customers who want to learn more about how do I use a foundation, for example. How do I move beyond an eyeliner or a lipstick, which is the basic product. Now, education we've seen is led through a lot of influencers and has been done so over the last couple of years. Now, where are they influencing? They're influencing primarily, and let's move the clock back a bit. About 8 to 10 years back, people used to spend time writing long format blogs. Then, because attention span decreased, nobody would read those blogs. Plus, nobody goes to a blog. I mean, it's tough enough to create content. Imagine driving traffic to your own content. So everybody moved to the platform, which became YouTube. And the attention spans shortened to about 6 to 7 minute videos. Now, then it shortened even further to Instagram, and now there are reels and stories that are even shorter. So as the attention span keeps getting shorter, that whole old adage of a picture conveys 1,000 words. So because while you're scrolling, nobody stops to read an arresting picture or a photograph. That is, I think, why content plays so beautifully as a layer with performance marketing. That is why a lot of brands these days adopt a designed for digital policy, wherein it's not just us. Product teams are now obsessing over, when I shoot my product in a 1:1 aspect ratio square photograph, how big does the brand look on the screen as a person scrolling? Is it a thumb stopping image? These are new words that have come up. So we've gone through the entire funnel, and what we've also seen is that it's not enough to just run one campaign at a time, for example, or focus on one metric at a time. For example, for a long while, as I think Siddharth mentioned, the CAC, the customer acquisition cost, is what we end up tracking. And that, if we just focus on that, sometimes we leave a lot of money on the table. And I'll explain why. For a long while, that is the only metric we obsessed with. We said, okay, let's just try to get new customers come in, and at the cheapest possible cost. Let's acquire customers at the cheapest possible cost. Then we realized, if you split test different buckets of campaigns, some which are say pushing a price advantage, but some which are pushing a say unique value of the product or a feature of the product. So different campaigns acquire say different cohorts of customers. Now, the CAC, I'm referring to CAC as the customer acquisition cost. The CAC for price or discount led offers, as you would guess, would be much lesser than that of the CAC of, say, let's say, value-based campaigns or feature selling campaigns. But if you go one level deeper, the average order value that we see from the latter for feature-based campaigns is also higher than what we see in those customers who are being acquired just on the basis of price. So beyond a point, it's a business call to decide that, are we only going to optimize on the CAC, or do we say ultimately it's a matter of my P&L, right? So as long as my CAC is maybe in this campaign 35% higher than pure discount campaigns, maybe it protects my brand a little bit. I don't end up being somebody who's always shouting discounts from the top of the roof. And I can push the average order value up, maybe upsell, cross-sell something, because this customer who's entered my funnel has entered not with a price trigger. So over the years, we've become more advanced in how we change the journey of a user, depending on which user campaign they come in with. But it's an ongoing process. Every new feature and changes so fast. But I think we are trying to move beyond just a plain vanilla way of looking at how we acquire customers through price and just a unidimensional view of CAC.
I think that's super interesting. And this is a question that's, I guess, maybe particularly interesting to me, given that I'm kind of about to start this D2C journey. But in terms of those nuances, when you're dealing with very important stakeholders like investors and fundraising, who are often looking for, really focusing on big headline metrics, at least initially, like CAC. I'm just curious if you've had any pushback or like how you've tried to tell that story, because it can be difficult to tell a more nuanced story to investors.
So I think there is some confusion when you suddenly see, okay, we've tried a different campaign and there's been a minor spike in the CAC, but as long as it grows overall top line, we've been able to slide this under the ambit of the overall story that we because one thing certain, I think a brand has to compete on multiple fronts with everybody, and because there is enough to compete for, right? So if a brand consistently tries to win customers through price, how it's I don't think it's scalable, because at the end of the day there'll be somebody who will maybe get better economies of scale due to more funds being raised, and they can undercut you ultimately. I mean, we're not creating, as they say, it's not rocket science that we have proprietary technology to run a CPG business. So that's why there are multiple levers, and whenever we push on, let's say, range of a like we say this matte lipstick, in the market our competitors say, for example, have say 30 shades, and we can have a narrative that we have say 60 shades for you. So all of these things have very different audience cohorts who react to them, have very different AOVs, average order values, and CACs. And over a period of time, we've built, I mean, I'm just referring to two of them, but we've built about 7 or 8 of these different user journeys as to who's coming through what. That is question number one. Secondly, of course, which we can talk about later, is where do they come from? Do they natively land on the app, or are you taking them through the website journey? Because we found apps to perform far more superior, especially for retargeting campaigns, than websites. And lastly, how seamless what do you offer as a checkout? In India, there is something very peculiar about not just prepaid orders. There's also cash on delivery that happens. I'm not sure if it's there that prevalent in other geographies, but we actively try to optimize for who we prioritize showing the option to. I mean, if somebody's purchased prepaid order, you could just not show COD, or show COD very separately, just to make the user flow very, very seamless. So there's a lot of science which we learn from a lot of our competitors as well. But I think that's what makes the performance marketing funnel work. Not just it's good in a way. This means that it doesn't matter if somebody raises 50% more marketing dollars than you can still do a better job if you can add some science to it. So sorry, I think I overspoke my time, but I just want to continue that thought.
Super interesting. Thanks a lot. And maybe we jump to Siddharth, and I guess a similar question in terms of, how you optimize, how you make sure you find using the right channels to reach the right audiences. And again, like if there are any differences between, what you experience with Unilever versus what a younger startup might experience.
So what we have seen for the Unilever campaigns that we set up for UShop, which is our D2C, is that whenever we treat Facebook and Google separately, right? Even though they're like the most relevant ad platforms for us, Facebook and Google bring audiences in different scales, in different qualities for us. So, for example, the universe of Facebook is certainly smaller than the universe that Google has to offer. So Google generally gives you lower CPMs and lower CTRs for that matter. It comes with it. But what we have seen is that Google works really well when your campaign has the width of products. So if you have like 100 products in your shopping catalog in Google Smart Shopping, it does really well. But if you're running the same campaign on Facebook, even 5 to 10 products can do really well on Facebook. So Google, the scalability on Google comes with the scalability on your inputs as well. So if you have a width, that's when we are seeing that Google do well, because and also the properties of the placement properties that Google and Facebook natively place the ads are very different. If you think about it, Facebook and Instagram are platforms where you go when you are having some free time or at your leisure time, right? That's when you scroll Facebook. That's when you scroll Instagram. There is higher chance that you would stop and click on a content piece and go and explore. Google, on the other hand, say their display advertising, for example, they come in when you're reading a newspaper article, when you're playing a game. That's when the display ads come in. That's when the video ads come in. The chance to quit what you're doing and then click on that ad to go in and buy it's a longer path compared to Facebook, because Facebook, you're already there for leisure, right? So that's a solid learning that we have had, where Facebook, the quality of audience, the propensity to buy with high intent audience comes from Facebook. And yeah, just touching a few points on optimization. Uh, what performance marketing today has done is it has eliminated the bias for what kinds of audience work for brands, right? So, for example, the way we do say performance marketing is we generally start off broad. We go Gen Pop. We generally have a Gen Pop as an audience set. We have an MHVG or a HVG as an audience set, and then we have the brand first party audiences, and we do something called as a campaign budget optimization and see how it plans out. We let the machine learning do its thing, and we see how it plans out and which audience works well. And sometimes it gives you surprising results than what you expect. Sometimes, a Gen Pop can do really well. Sometimes the first party data will overkill the Gen Pop. So and that's very crucial to experiment, and it's very important for brands and managers to know that sometimes, yeah, your first party data is rich, it is good for remarketing, but when you're prospecting, when you're getting out new customers, sometimes you should be ready to be surprised as to which audience could work. So one of the brands that we handle had a green tea brand that we handled had a female Indian celebrity on it, but we were surprised to see that the highest orders came from male Gen Pop audience. So that kind of stuff. So because men actually put on more weight than women during the pandemic, so that's how that whole thing came to existence. So it's really beautiful and interesting to understand how machine learning can work, and we generally put a lot of trust in it. For like, we give it the time to optimize, and we do not fiddle with the campaigns. There's sometimes you feel that need to check it every week. I mean, I would suggest everybody to monitor it daily, but then optimize it monthly, or like review it fortnightly. So, but there's always this need that oh, this creative is not working. There's a format that's not working, and when you disturb that in the middle of a week, when the campaign is in the learning phase, that's when the campaign will again go into a learning phase, leading to a higher CAC and lesser ROAS and all of that. So yeah, so that's something that I wanted to share.
Cool. Thanks a lot. And I think some pretty good insights there. And maybe just actually speaking of the pandemic, question for you, George, which is again a pretty broad one. But what are some of the trends or changes that you've seen in this space in performance marketing over the past 18 months during the pandemic, and then maybe even more importantly, what are some of the trends or things that you're expecting to come over the next 18 months?
Yeah, I think that is a really important question. And funny enough, we actually had the conversation inside our team regarding our brand.com comparing with the marketplaces. I think that's something that we've been seeing in the last 18 months during the pandemic, when the entire world kind of like went upside down. And also, I wouldn't like to call it post-pandemic, because I think this I think that this thing is going to stay for a couple of years, from a perspective of how are the businesses reacting and how consumers are reacting. I think that two important aspects, at least in Southeast Asia, a lot of consumers, they went actually to the marketplaces, because there started a lot of offers coming from the marketplaces, for example, from Shopee and Lazada and other marketplaces. And we've seen a trend in the sense that consumers are starting to buy things that they got used to buying offline, and suddenly they realize that, oops, all of the shops are closed. So they realize actually that they can do a lot of, for example, grocery online. People that they were intentionally based and touching and feeling the product. So you as a brand, how can you actually transform this and give the same experience online, right? And how can you give the same experience on the marketplaces, and how can you give the same experience on the brand.com? And that's one trend, and we realized that we needed to shift it a little bit our budget from Facebook and Google to the marketplaces, because we realized that we needed to adapt. We couldn't pump money into Facebook and Google, two channels that we were really working and they were super optimized from a perspective of campaigns, and what used to work a month before prior to the lockdown, it was not working now. And for example, for us coming from an automotive business, how can we learn to adapt in a current trend that customers are actually using our products when is on the move, but when everybody is home, how can you actually adapt? And we realized that, one, shifting the budget to the marketplaces, doing a lot of campaigns, doing discounts that are actually make sense, coming up with products that are adapted to the current situation. So that was probably one of the things that we actually adapted. And how important is customer service? I cannot stress enough that personal experience. I went to a marketplace or I went to another website and I wanted to buy something and I had to wait like 50 an hour to get a response. So that created a bad customer experience. And what we actually needed when we were looking from a perspective of performance marketing, it was not in the way that you're optimizing your ads, but in how fast and how qualified is the customer support. And I think that was like super important. And we realized that having a strong relationship with all of these marketplaces and calling them and getting into meeting and using all of the resources that they have and joining all of the single days campaigns and dropping a little bit more money into these packages, it actually generated a return of ad spend, a return of investment. We were focusing a lot on existing customers. So for example, for us, probably like 20 or 25% of the customers are actually return customer. And we realized that, hey, it's actually getting really expensive in the current pandemic in the beginning to gain new customers, but how can we convince the existing customers to actually to become the brand ambassadors of the business, right? How can we convince them that these customers are VIP? How can we convince them that they should be the brand ambassadors? So that is why we created, for example, loyalty scheme for them. Yeah, so what I was basically saying is that what we actually really needed to understand is that customers that are the return customers are the key prime source of growth in this pandemic. And we created a loyalty scheme especially for them, that, hey, if you promote the business, if you share the product, here is a unique code that you're getting money if you're becoming, let's say, in a way, an affiliator. That was probably the key component. And we focused a lot on existing customers prior to the pandemic, because we understand that is getting more and more expensive to acquire new customers.
Cool, thanks a lot. And then Kaushik, same question. I think you've actually already spoken a little bit in some of your previous responses around changes that maybe you've seen over the past few years. But if you could talk a little bit more specifically about, the last 18 months, and then again, even more importantly, like what do you see coming up in the next 18 months or in the near future?
I think the biggest shift we've observed in the last year and a half is that a lot of people have made the time or bandwidth or just investment to learn more about the category, not specifically your brand, our brand, but the category. Now, when that happens, our audience base, especially if you're in a country like India, it's very diverse. I mean, there are vernacular languages and channels with very large followership on YouTube, for example. So, I mean, that we knew it would happen eventually, and at some scale, we would have to diversify our ad copy, our creatives, everything that we use on performance marketing or even brand marketing for that. But I think that was majorly accelerated because when everybody was at home last year, and suddenly we saw engagement on our platforms go to the roof, we started getting queries which were not in English, for example, from a lot of tier two. And I mean, don't get me wrong, excellent demand and interest over there. So we had to adapt pretty quickly to the way we communicate. There was no one audience pool of upwardly mobile rising spend consumer base, there was an absolute newbie who had just, let's say, started spending time learning about, and that coupled with a lot of things happened in the last 12 months. I mean, after there was the infamous TikTok ban, of course, in India, but that was getting a lot of tier 2, tier 3 content creators as well, because it had become easier to create content. I mean, there's a lot of there's a narrative about how content creation was democratized by TikTok. You could showcase anything that could be of interest, not just a pretty photo. So now that has been taken over by a lot of other short format vernacular social media apps. Now we've not even begun to explore slash exploit that to our advantage. I mean, there are many short-term experiments that we've launched in the last 6 months to understand what is this audience. The only thing we know about this, that this is an audience that is very curious to learn about these new categories and trends. They are very young, so it's a completely new way to reimagine how we've been thinking about spending our marketing dollars. And we are talking about a smaller amount, 10 to 15% of our budgets and experiments over there. Not all of the platforms have very nuanced ad platforms as well, so it's a bit as Siddharth said, if you spend money and don't get data in return, it can be irritating. So we are trying to work around that. But I think these platforms are here to stay, especially in a country as diverse as India, geography as diverse as APAC. So we will need to up our game in that. That's one of the priorities for us in the next 1.5 years.
No, super interesting. And I think, I mean, the point you mentioned specifically about the, I guess, expansion in the consumer base in India, and the interest that you're seeing in new categories and your products from, you know, outside the traditional metros or tier 1 cities. I mean, that's something that we saw at Lego as well. India's been a kind of big expansion focus market for us as well over the past few years, and I think we saw something quite similar with the pandemic. So interesting to hear that from a totally different category. Siddharth, I know that you guys have launched a little bit more recently, so maybe you don't have the same lessons from the pandemic, but in terms of trends that you see going forward.
Yeah. So see, what I would like to say is, like, see, pre-pandemic, performance marketing was, even though it existed, like, it was something like that was good to have. Brands still focused on branding campaigns, right? And performance marketing was there, but it was not budgeted properly. It didn't have an annual roadmap to it, right? Pandemic, when the entire pandemic happened and the entire, like, you know, the management had scrutiny on every dollar that was spent and what is the ROAS that you're getting, what's the returns that you're getting. So marketers really had to pull up their socks and see, like, how to spend campaigns. Like, we can't we can't just spend on branding campaigns all the time. We also need sales because our supply chain is disrupted, right? So, and that's when the D2C was born. So when so now, after, say, the post pandemic, post the second wave, now that's what we are seeing is with all the brands that we work internally also, it is part of their media mix. Like, there's no question that, you know, whether they want to do performance marketing or not. It's always there, and there is budgets allocated to it, and that's how they want to go about it. In terms of the future, see, I feel like, you know, in India, I read somewhere that, you know, there are 600 D2C brands in India at the moment, and the performance marketing that we are speaking now, it's still in its baby phase. Like, we still have to mature to teenage and, you know, adulthood and all of that. So I personally feel the amount of performance marketing and the properties that Google and Facebook would additionally bring in. Like, Google, I think, recently brought in something called as the Performance Max campaign, which is a combination of search and smart shopping campaigns together. So there will be newer properties that these giants would bring in. Like, Facebook would come up with newer ad properties, newer ways to entice the audience to purchase, and there's a lot of untapped spends that will flow into the market as we speak. Another development was when I had recently spoken to a friend of mine who is trying to develop a platform that can automate influencer bidding. So, for example, just like how we set up a campaign, here you needn't go to an influencer agency to set up a specific you didn't go to an influencer agency to shortlist certain influencers, for that matter. You load the money in, and then you say, this is what I want, like, just like how you set a KPI on performance marketing, and the platform activates influencers for you. So that way, I feel the whole influencer section right now, the whole influencer categorization will be very it will come into a process oriented setup. is what I feel. Like it will have strict guidelines to it. It will be easily approachable to everybody. You don't need to spend a lot of time shortlisting influencers. And when I say influencers, these are digital celebrities, not mainline celebrities, obviously. But yeah, so that is something that I see coming maybe in the next 3-4 years, where influencer marketing will be highly automated. And right now it's very physical through phone calls, and a lot of things are very physical right now in and around influencers at the moment. Yeah.
Got it. Well, thanks so much for that. I think we are at time, so we'll have to close the session. But that was a really interesting discussion. Huge amount of insights. Really good to hear about the journeys of your individual businesses, but also some of the things that you guys have been doing to optimize some of the trends that you've seen over the past 18 months, and also how you see the space evolving over the future. And I think some good advice in there as well for anyone in this field or even entering this field. So yeah, thank you so much to all of our panelists, and hope everyone in the audience enjoyed that.